Welcome back, everybody, to the Act 2, the podcast. Um, Another episode coming to you. We are in beautiful Puerto Rico, San Juan. And again, I have a lovely guest, Natasha, on the show tonight. I'm just going to give y'all another episode of us giving y'all some decent conversation, but actually want to do an insight into who we are. So tonight gonna be just a walk through who we are, who she is, who I am, and some of the things that made us who we are sitting here today in front of y'all, and kind of why we want to talk to y'all. So without further ado, let's get started. So while we talking to the people and giving the people insight into our story and why we do what we do and the things that we go through, they don't know who we are. Like, they don't know, like, where we come from, who we are. It's just two people sitting up here talking. So, starting with you, like, who are you? I mean, that's an open-ended, broad question, but who are you?
So just for transparency, since this is your show and I don't know at all what you're going to talk about or what you're going to ask me. My heart dropped a little bit when you said
Why?
that. I don't know, because I think it's kind of purposeful. I don't want to say that I don't let people know who I am. I think people who need to know who I am, but I'm not one to. It's one thing in being transparent and over divulgent of your business, and I just am not over divulgent of my personal business. So when you say like who you are, it's like, wow, that can go in a lot of different ways, and I'm open to say whatever.
No, I mean,
but
I can ask specific questions like, who are you? Like, okay, more of where do you come from? Like, how?
Okay.
Where do you come from?
Born and raised in Philadelphia, North Philadelphia, born and raised. No time on the basketball court. But come from North Philly. Raised in a two-parent household, oldest sister of 3. Anybody knows me, who really knows me, knows that. But just came from the hood, like so many other people. Came from a family of some love, some dysfunction, some drama, but still some love. High school, went to the best high school in the city, Philadelphia High School for Girls, if I must say so myself, 242. Anybody who's a girl's high girl, you always represent your class. So 242.
Okay, 242. 242 it is.
Yes, 242. So that was a big jump from being born and raised in North Philly to high school. But
what about elementary, middle school? What about your younger years? Like, what was your circumstances when you were young?
You know what? I'm one of those people who went to a lot of schools, not because of like any crazy or bad circumstances. It was actually, I guess, a good reason. And my mom attempting to get me.
Somewhere she's gonna put in that she was in MG. Go ahead.
I was a mentally gifted student. You're such a hater.
Bullshit.
And my mom's attempt to find the best education for me. So in, elementary school, I went to Thomas Mifflin Elementary from kindergarten to 3rd grade. My mom worked there. And I went there. In the 3rd grade, it's always crazy because yes, I was a mentally gifted student, 1st, 2nd, and 3rd grade. Actually, no, I'm sorry, from 1st to 8th grade, where, I took additional MG courses where it might have been off the school campus or maybe somewhere within the school building in a different classroom. But I remember like going to other sites where other students from around the city, other MG students from around the city
came. What made you mentally gifted though? What was like a test you took?
I mean, it started in 1st grade. I would be lying.
A problem you solved? Like, what was it to make them say, this kid's mentally gifted?
It wasn't just me. Well, at Mifflin, don't recall there being other students who went with me to the MG classes, and if it was, I apologize that I forget. But I don't know. Maybe it was a test because my mom was always very geared towards getting the best education for me. Like I took different tests for private schools, for admissions, but for scholarships as well for the financial aspect of it. And I always did really, really well in school. Like I always did really well in school. And I know we talked about it, on another piece of content about me in college and that kind of thing, which was no indication of my intellectual level. Just college didn't pan out to be for me, but I did well in school.
You're moving too fast. You're already in college.
No, I'm just using that to say throughout school I did well. So back to elementary school. Went to Mifflin. In third grade, I was actually in the what was called LD class, but the class for learning disabilities.
IMG, learning disabilities.
But it was for
short bus.
It was for a reason. That year, you would never think that children could be so horribly behaved. I remember my first teacher, forget her name, she was mugged and her leg broke. So she was out, and we constantly had substitutes, and the kids in the class were so horribly bad. I remember this one substitute.
So they left you back?
No, they didn't leave me back. What happened was my mom, because she worked there, she knew Miss Adderley, who was a beautiful African American woman. She taught the learning disability class. So it was like probably half of the school year left. And she asked if I could be in Miss Adderley's class just for the discipline and the direction to make sure I wasn't in the other class with all the kids who was running amok. I'll never forget, I called myself cutting class in the building in third grade where my mom worked. It was crazy. And just was running the halls, like literally running up and down the halls, running up the back stairwell. And I remember saying to one of my friends, like, let's not go down that hallway because my mom might see me. My mom was walking by and backed up and saw me. So that's when she asked Miss Adderley if I can be in her class, just for structure into this. So it wasn't for the whole school year, but it was until the end of the school year was over. In today's world, I don't even know if a parent has the authority to do that, but that's why they placed me in that class. So after that, she transferred me, of course. I went to my local elementary school, which was Richard R. Wright in our neighborhood, for 4th and 5th grade. Graduated from there. I still was in MG. Then I went to Fitzsimons, the local middle school, and I wanted to stay at Fitzsimons just because my friends was there. It was the local school.
What was the neighborhood like in Fitzsimons, like the neighborhood you grew up in? What was that like? Like your experience, not.
I was sheltered. I mean, yes, I knew the neighborhood was bad and stuff went on. I guess I really wasn't in the midst of that. Like, I knew stuff that went on. Fitzsimons wasn't a good school. It was fights, and I got suspended one time because the principal said I was cutting class, and I wasn't. But, it was a bad school, which, again, my mom wanted me to get out of there. I mean, you could, I feel like in any school, no matter how good or bad it is, if a student wants to learn, you can do well. You have people all over the world who come from bad schools and still succeed and do well. The school itself, bad reputation, so it was the neighborhood school. Like, well, a lot of neighborhood middle schools is not really thought of as being a great academic environment. But I did my work. I did what I was supposed to do. But she had applied for me to go to another school. We didn't know that I got accepted. So I showed up to Fitzsimons on the first day of 7th grade. And they called all the students to let them know which advisory they were going to. And I sat there the whole time. They never called my name. And I went up like, hey, I'm here. You didn't call me. So they did their due diligence, whatever that was. And they were like, oh, you got transferred to another school. So they called my mom like, she's supposed to be at Fittler. And my mom's like, well, that's where you're going. And I cried. So I was like, I don't want to transfer. I want to stay here with my friends. Had to start wearing uniform, had to catch the school bus, but everything happens for a reason, so I don't regret it. Fittler was a great school. I think it was one of, I'm not going to say the first, but it was one of those magnet schools in the city. Like, we were uniform before uniform was a thing, like when only Catholic schools wore uniform. It was either uniform or a very strict dress code. No jeans, no sneakers, that kind of thing. So I went to Fittler for 7th and 8th grade, and then Girls High. So that was my elementary. So I went to a lot of schools, but it wasn't like I was getting kicked out or anything. That was just the path.
It's a long path.
I know. It was like what, Mifflin, Richard R. Wright, Fitzsimons, Fittler. Yeah, 5 schools within my 12 years. Not to mention Randolph Skills Center before it was a high school. I always remember like that was my preschool. It sticks out in my head, because of the snacks.
The snacks.
Because that's why I hate raisins to this day. And I hate raw carrots to this day. And I hate celery because they used to give us this salad that was like shredded raisins and carrots. And like, celery sticks with whatever you eat it with. And to this day, I can't eat it. Like, that's all I remember is it being, the doors being orange and having those snacks.
That's fucked up.
Yeah. And then that's what when we grew up and it changed into, it may have always been a high school, but just my preschool mind didn't know that it was a high school. But that was my correlation to Randolph Skills Center not being high school, but like, oh, that's the place I went to preschool.
So you go to elementary school, you go to Mifflin, you go to Fitzsimons, then you go to
Fittler,
then you go to Girls High.
Yes.
What was the better school? Don't say Girls High.
Well, I mean, better school is subjective because it was at what educational level. I definitely think Mifflin was a school. So Mifflin went from kindergarten. I went there, and I said from 1st to 3rd grade. I went there from kindergarten to 3rd grade, but it went up to 8th grade. One of the things I remember about Mifflin, it's so weird how life comes full circle. When I ended up going to Fittler for 7th and 8th grade, they had some kind of collaboration with Mifflin for like technical skills. So I used to go back to Mifflin. I think one day a week we went back for like home ec. So I learned how to sew there. I forget what else we did. So I mean, again, it's all relative. Mifflin was also a neighborhood school for.
Where was Mifflin at?
It's in the East Falls. My mom grew up in My mom grew up in Abbotsford Projects. My grandmom, that's where my mom was born and raised. So Mifflin was the neighborhood school there, which is where it's neighborhood school, but it wasn't like walking distance. You caught the school bus there, but that's where all the children from Abbotsford Projects were bused. It was in the East Falls, like not quite Manayunk. It was in the East Falls, like on the outskirts of Manayunk. I want to say Ridge and Midville, I think. No, that's a lie, not Ridge and Midville. It was off of something. But yeah, it's in the East Falls. So when you said what was the best school, that was a neighborhood school
question
too.
Would be like which of the schools, what I'm trying to get to is which of those schools shaped you to be who you are? Would you say shaped you more to be who you are today? What of those 4 schools? Which one? Was it the young age? Was it the middle age? Was it being in high school? Was there any influences in the neighborhood that made you who you are? The neighborhood that you was growing up in?
At Richard R. Wright, that was 4th and 5th grade. I remember a teacher, Miss Perry. Miss Perry was a big woman, very dominant, very stern. A lot of people were afraid of her. So to answer your question, I think there were different people at intervals. At Mifflin, I can't really say, I was so young, but in 4th and 5th grade, I remember her because she was never my teacher, but because I was on an advanced reading level, I used to go to her just for reading, and she used to always put me on a pedestal. Like, Natasha's here because she's here for reading because she's on a higher level, and Natasha's doing this. She made me memorize the I Have a Dream speech. So I think in retrospect, just thinking she helped me build confidence, because as a little kid, you're in front of these older kids and this teacher is telling them how great you are. That can be a little intimidating,
right?
But she helped build confidence. So that was there. And then when I went to Fitzsimons, can't really say like anybody was influential. I kind of just, it was more fun. When I went to Fittler, I had a teacher, Mr. Joftis, rest in peace. He was amazing. He was strict, but he was really good. I also had a teacher, Miss. He was my eighth grade teacher, Miss Hoy. Another beautiful black woman was my seventh grade teacher, and they were good. It was a good environment, good discipline, good structure. So I think that fourth and fifth grade experience being around Miss Perry, that was a very pivotal moment in my childhood education where she really helped me build that confidence and just being like, I'm not gonna dumb myself down, because some people can go either way. Like, I don't want to be smart, I don't want to keep being pointed out, and I don't know what went through my mind. I'm sure there was a little, embarrassment, I guess, when she's used to do that, but it was like, okay, hold your head up, be proud, be who you are. Like, you're not going to be stupid for anybody. It is what it is. So I think that was like the most pivotal moment. High school was hard. Not so much the academics, but personal family life stuff made my high school experience
like what?
Probably different than what it could be. My mom worked. My dad was who he was, worked sometimes, most of the time didn't. And I really had to help take care of my sisters. So, at 12 years old, I was, making full dinners and stuff like that. So when I got to high school my youngest sister was born when I was 12. Got to high school at 13. I really didn't have much free time to participate in like after school activities and that kind of thing.
Stuff.
Yeah, so it was school and home because my mom, her shift for probably 20 years was 2 p.m. to 10 p.m. So she was there when we left for school. When we got home, she wasn't. So it was like, okay, I gotta get home. I gotta make, dinner. She would probably maybe prepare some things and I had to warm it up, but dinner had to be ready. I had to help them with homework if necessary, do hair, help them get ready for bed. So I really didn't have time for extracurriculars. And my dad was so strict. High school, it was one of the best moments of my life because I met some people with whom I have lifelong friendships with, and I had to maneuver and do things to make the best of it. But it wasn't, some people love their high school years. It was just, I made it through. It wasn't horrible, but it wasn't like, oh my God, I had the time of my life.
What did college do for you?
So I went to Drexel.
Besides fucking up.
College for me kind of humbled me and made me realize, okay, sis, like, you were smart, you did great all these years in school. I wasn't ready for college. One, I think it was some resistance in me. I graduated at 17 and I don't know, I think at 18 I probably could have made my own decision and say I'm going away regardless of what my parents say. But my dad was not in agreement with allowing me to go away to college. And I had some resistance and like, I know Temple's an awesome school, but it was in North Philly, and I just, in my mind, this is so stupid.
That's pops.
Didn't a lot of us. But in my mind, it was like, I'm not going to Temple. I live in North Philly. That's in North Philly. At least I want to catch the bus out of the neighborhood. That's so dumb, but that was my mental space. But I knew Drexel was a great school. But when I got to Drexel, I think that was like my first Black in America experience.
You told me you felt like you wasn't the smartest person there no more.
Oh, hell. I kind of felt like that in high school. Like, I knew I could do it, but in high school, it was like, a lot of the Asian, I think most of the Asian girls were like the top tier, but in college, it really humbled me because it wasn't even about academics. I could have done well if I applied myself, but I felt, it was like I'm in Philadelphia and I felt like a stranger. Like,
just being downtown?
Well, you always call that downtown.
Being on Market Street, whatever, yeah. University City.
It was, like, I mean, I'm not going to say there weren't any Black girls, but there were a few. I didn't know anybody, I don't think. It was this one girl, Kelly, that I graduated high school with. We were cool, we weren't friends, but I remember seeing her on campus. But I didn't know anybody. And, I'm a friendly person, but I'm not that outgoing. Hi, I'm Natasha, let's be friends. It has to happen organically for me. Like, I'm just not that kind of person. And I met a couple girls. It was like, I think it was one Black girl and 2 or 3 white girls, and we had a lot of classes together. but they stayed on campus. So it was a different dynamic. Like when it was time to study for a test, they would be up in the dorm or whatever you call those communal areas in the dorms.
Study halls.
Yeah, like study. Yeah, I was thinking of what did they call it on a different world? I don't know, but anyway, study hall. They could be like, oh, we're gonna eat dinner and then we'll meet up at 9 o'clock or something. Since 9 o'clock, like I need to be on. I've been home, like it was. So it was just a very. I didn't like it. It was a different experience for me. And college, we know it's very independent. Like you got all these classes, you got all this work to do. Prioritize time management. We know time management is not my best attribute.
Not at all.
It wasn't then, and I'm still working to improve that. But it was again, that was like my first Black in America experience, which feels so weird because I was in my hometown, but it just was weird and it wasn't a good experience for me mentally. And then what ended up happening after my freshman year, I got put out. My father found out I had he found out I had a tattoo. I actually had 3 at the time. And him being who he was and strict in the way that he was, that wasn't allowed. So I got put out. That was at the end of my freshman year. So I had actually failed out of college. Like I just didn't do what I was supposed to do. I got put out and I told myself like, I got to do better. I'm going to get myself back in. So I started working. And then when the school started back up, I remember going to the admissions counselor. I was a biological science major is what they called it. I wanted to be a doctor. But, instead of being a biology major, they just called it biological science. You go through that and then you go to med school, whatever. So I was a biological science major. It was extremely hard. I had like 3 science classes in my first, my freshman year. It was hard. Then I changed my mind. I don't want to do that anymore. So I went to the admissions counselor. I explained to her I had some personal things going on at home. I kind of lied a little bit because the stuff that happened with me getting put out was at the end of my freshman year, but I just used that to, cry wolf a little bit. I changed my major to psychology. She allowed me back in. And I don't even remember her name, but I feel bad because I still dropped out. I mean, she was willing to let me back in. But part of that reasoning was I was already put out. I was living with my grandma. Rest in peace. I love her to death. And I started working. I'm not living at home. Got to take care of myself. And I always had a job, since I was 13. But now it's like, okay, I'm working. I don't live at home anymore. So it was work and school. Then it was school and work. And then it was work, a little bit of school, work, a little bit of school. Then my job to be like, I thought you had classes today. Like, I thought you couldn't work today. And I'm like, oh, I moved them around, like, because they cared. Like, they knew that I was a student. But work became more prevalent than school. And
to the point where it's like flunk.
Yeah, like I need this money. I can go to school a different time. And I had a couple different attempts at school. I tried to go back one time to be a medical assistant. That didn't work out because I was working all the time and then trying to go to school. I don't regret any of it because that, it led my path to where it is now and it all worked out in the end. But yeah, that was my long educational history.
That was a broken up summary of where you come from and what you do.
I know this is your show, but can I ask you too?
Yeah, sure.
Ask me what. Who are you? Where did you come from? What was your education like?
I'm from 26 New York. Grew up there, same neighborhood you grew up from. York to Dolphin, 25th to 27th. It's like a box. Just one square box. And I spent a lot of years there. Elementary school. Went to, where did I go to elementary school? I went to Whittier.
Wait, can I ask a question? Because I know this and the people don't know this. Where did you come from before you came to 26th Street?
I lived in California with some, my mom was messing with someone who was in the military, and he was stationed out there. So we lived in California in a big house in a cul-de-sac. And I had a little white friend named Chris, and he was cool as shit.
You always talk about Chris.
He used to take me in the creeks and shit and climb trees, but that's another story. We came to live with my nana, Margaretta Dees, on Banbury Street in Philly. I don't know what year this was, but I had to be 2, 3 years old. I was young. No, I might have been a little older than that. I was here first, and then I left, and then I came back.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so we was here first with Nana, with my grandmother. Then we left, went to California, Virginia and California. Then we came back. And when we came back, I was at least 6 or 7 years old. 6 or 7 years old. And we wasn't going long. We was just going for a couple of years. But when we came back, I was at least 6 or 7 years old. But I went to Whittier Elementary School. This was back in the day when you could use your grandmother's address to go to school, to do good school. So instead of going to Richard R. Wright, where you went to filthy bad school, I went to Whittier up in a nice neighborhood. And then from there,
right. 27 for Allegheny.
And then from there, I went to E.W. Rhodes. I was real proud of that.
I used to be a little jealous of Rhodes because they had the swimming pool and Fitzsimons didn't.
Yeah. And then I got, living around 26th Street, being so caught up in the hype of the neighborhood, I wanted to go to Fitzsimons bad, like bad as hell. So I remember getting kicked out of Rhodes and Fitzsimons having to be like the school that I have to go to. And from there, Fitzsimons was like the neighborhood in a building, because it was like everything that was outside the neighborhood was inside there. And Fitzsimons was cool. It wasn't like East Side High or nothing yet, but it was cool. It was rough, but so I was growing up then. Fitzsimons, I had to be 13, 14, 15 years old, and then from Fitzsimons was Simon Gratz. That was my high school. Simon Gratz was like East Side High though. It probably, like, it could have been East Side High. It was rough there. But, went to Gratz, made it through. Then I got locked up for a gun and kicked out of Gratz.
What grade were you in?
9th.
Oh, wow. You just got started.
Yeah, got locked up in Gratz with 2 guns, got kicked out in the auditorium, got kicked out, and then they forced me to go to Strawberry Mansion, which I went like maybe 2 weeks and then didn't go back. So that was my extended mansion. And then from there, dropped out. That was 10th grade.
Wow.
So yeah.
So which school do you feel, or were there any marks or pivotal points through that journey that really made an impression on you? I'm sorry, I know this is your show, but can I ask a question?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
What was any marks that made a pivotal point on in that journey? I would say Fitzsimons. Fitzsimons was a place where, like, I really learned to be bad. So it was like, it just was a lot of bad stuff going on. Like, I really was into selling drugs and cutting class and doing a whole bunch of dumb shit. So that changed me in a sense, not necessarily for the good, but for the bad. So that was a pivotal moment. And getting locked up in Gratz with 2 handguns, that in an auditorium full of people, that was a pivotal moment for myself. Being cuffed and taken out of high school, out of your high school auditorium, like, who wants that? Who wants to remember that? But that's a part of my story too. So yeah, that's a pivotal moment. Did you mean like for the good?
Well, well,
Because those two specific was for the bad.
right. So pivotal, it still made an impression on you. It left a mark. So I guess my follow up question would be: were there any positive moments or any pivotal moments that made a positive impression or had a positive influence on your future?
In school?
Yeah, in your educational history.
Zero. I remember one teacher from school, Miss Beasley, who was super nice and super attentive. But other than that, I don't have no memory of any teachers or any pivotal moment positive that affected me in a positive way going forward in an educational standpoint. No, zero. Like if I think about elementary school, it was just kids going to school, like nothing really happened. And in middle school, there was a whole bunch of negative shit going on. So it wasn't like a lot of positive things that I was getting from school. I was actually losing school. So like school was slipping away from me. And then high school, forget about it. Like that's when I dropped out of school. So no, it was no positive points in school that shaped me for today.
Do you feel like any of the teachers that you had could have, I don't know if their approach was different, it could have changed your path? Or do you feel like the streets just had a bigger pull and no matter what any of the teachers tried to do, the cookie was going to crumble the way it did regardless?
It was like the streets had such a hold on me at that point that no teacher or no, I remember at Fitzsimons I had an NTA house director, they called them, not NTAs, house directors, and I was in D house, and Mr. Ryan was a house director. He was stern as shit, but he was like the first like father figure that I felt like comfortable listening to and talking to. Like he was like straight laced military dude, kind of heavy set, but you know he took a liking to me. So I do remember him in a sense of trying to be like, you know, stop this bullshit, stop cutting class. I don't want to see you out here no more like that. Like, you know, you're a young black brother and shit like that. So that I remember from him, but teachers, no.
That's sad. I mean, not like for you, but that, I mean,
it was the 90s. I mean, not a lot of teachers gave a shit about,
especially in the inner
kids.
cities.
Yeah, not a lot of teachers gave a shit, especially grats. Like, again, grats, I got locked up with 2 handguns in an auditorium, so that lets you know how loosely secure grats was. Like, anybody, you didn't even have to go there, you could walk in that school.
You saying that, it gives me all the vibes of Eastside High.
That's what it was.
Yeah.
Spray paint on the lockers, 3,000 kids when it should be 1,000. Yeah, that's what Grants was. Overcrowded, just like the SEPTA buses that took you from school to home. If it got to the point where like the bus drivers would see certain students coming to the bus and they would just shut the doors and pull off, like, y'all ain't getting on here today. Y'all ain't tearing up my bus today. So yeah, it was a lot of bad shit going on. But to answer your question, no positive, overwhelming, significant point in school that was like eye-opening or life-changing for me.
What was your favorite subject in school?
Till later. My favorite subject had to be math.
I knew you were going to say that.
I was super dope at multiplication.
You and your multiplication.
Addition, subtraction, multiplication drill sheets we used to have, and we used to watch the big clocks, 60 seconds all the way around, and I used to smoke that shit. Addition, subtraction, multiplication, division. That shit just came easy to me. That's it.
Okay, that was an interesting journey.
That's all the questions you got?
I mean, well, it's your show, so I just
I'm just giving you the opportunity to ask your question. That's all I was doing.
Okay, so this is related, but in a slightly different direction. Given the current climate, how do you think, how successful or unsuccessful do you think you would have been, if you had to do virtual school today?
Hmm. That's all. I don't think I would do well because even then I wasn't computer literate. So, are you saying
Well, yeah, let's take that part out of it because, of course, this is a different generation. So in the 90s, like I remember using the fax machine for the
right?
first time in AOL. So let's say that piece of it, but just thinking of your interest in school, your discipline, your prioritization, your home life, whether how your parental influence would have
Oh,
impacted
okay.
that.
All right,
Just
I
all
understand.
of the environmental components that would go into it, how successful do you think you would be if you had to log on every day to do school?
I think I would succeed well if you put it like that today. I would succeed well because what bothered me in school was I was impressionable and influenced. So, it didn't take much to get me to cut class. Like, let's go get some pizza, let's go get some weed, and boom, we out of class. So, the being around my peers and yeah, that was a problem for me. So if I didn't have to be around peers who could influence me or set an impression on me, older dudes who could set an impression on me, then I think I would have did fine.
So you think you would have had the
Being
discipline?
computer literate, yeah, in the '90s, yeah,
Right.
I think I would have been fine.
Okay.
Yeah, I think I would have been fine.
That's it worries me. Now, do you think that missing the social component from school would have affected you? Like, not, because for some kids, going to school, seeing their friends and all, it's different though, because our generation, we had neighborhood friends. So if you had to do virtual school, when you log off, you go out, you play with your friends. But again, putting yourself in today's world, do you think that social aspect of school would have impacted you negatively or positively, or the lack of that social aspect?
In hindsight, I would say no, because I don't, I really don't care about being that social, or I don't know how to be. I would say not necessarily. I don't care. Um, but it's weird because when I was younger, I was 10 times more social growing up than I am now. It's that like that shift didn't happen until like I got older in my age, got locked up, went to jail and stuff like that, and that's when um, my social button became muted. But as growing up as a kid, like I was prime. Everybody knew who I was. Everybody wanted to talk to me. All the girls wanted to talk to me. So being social wasn't a wasn't an issue. It wasn't a thing. That didn't happen till later, till I got older.
So let me just tell y'all, when he was a teenager, I used to have such a big crush on him. Like he said, we grew up in the same neighborhood, but he's 3.5 years older than me, so he didn't pay me no attention. Like he used to look at me as, oh, the girl that
The
walked,
Crumley girls.
who walked there. She used to walk her sister to church, but he used to have a box. And he used to have a blonde tail, like braided in the back, and it was dyed blonde. Oh, he used to look so good. And I'll never forget one day, my cousin Karen, she's really like a sister to me. I remember her over at our house, and we were sitting outside on the steps, and I was like, oh my goodness, he is so cute. I like him so much. Talking about him, pointing at him. She calls him. Was like, I don't know if she used to call you prominent or more or whatever. She calls him to come here, and he starts walking in. I ran in the house, like ran down the street, like, oh my God, she called him over here.
Mind you, I'm like 16 and she's 12. Like she's not even on the radar. I'm not even paying her zero attention
I
whatsoever.
was paying
Like,
you attention.
she's a girl who walks her sisters to school, and I mean not school but church and to the store, and they grandma house, and my mom lived a block away from them on the corner. So yeah, we did know each other growing up, and you did used to like me when you were such a baby, and like, no, I'm not doing that. But you such a fucking kid, and yeah, it was weird at 16 and 12, but not weird at
Yeah.
24 and 19.
Yeah, of course, of course. But yeah, that's different. So can I still ask you another question going back?
Go
So
ahead.
you talked about your educational path and you dropped out and then you went to jail. So I had this, I don't think it's weird. I think that people who never experienced it probably share the same thing. Like this fascination might not be the right word, but this interest in what is jail like. We see these shows like, where they go to jail for an amount of time to kind of be spies and stuff, or we watch Locked Up Abroad, and all these shows about prison, but never having gone to jail, I have no idea what it's really like. What was, jail was jail. I know in no way it was good, but what was it like and how did it impact you in the short term and what long term impact did it have on you?
Wow. First off, like I didn't understand jail because I grew up without a dad, so there was a lot of things about men and how to carry yourself that I didn't necessarily know. So getting locked up and going to jail and being with, thousands of dudes, some grown men, some boys, like that's a culture shift. Like no girls, like that's just a culture shift. So that I remember vividly, like, okay, you gotta move different. Can't smile so much, can't talk so much, can't not look people in the eye. Um, there's just a lot of things that I thought um, a man would have taught me how to be a man. Like I would have known these things in going to jail. So that was a culture shift for me there, and just having to um, grow as a man like real fast. Like can't cry, can't smile, can't be social. Like that's where all that stuff was stunted at, because it was like, okay, look at these grown ass dudes in here, and who the fuck want to see you smile, or who the fuck want to be friendly, and yeah, that's where all that stuff was stunted at. And what was the second part of your question?
How did that experience? Well, and what was it? So that's how it was like for you, personally. Like, what was the environment like, and how did it impact you on the short term and long term?
The environment it's trouble there if you want to look, if that's what you're looking for, and it's if you don't want to be in trouble, you don't have to be. You can just go and do your time, and as long as you carry yourself the right way, you'll be fine. No matter what jail they send you to or what prison they send you to, as long as you carry yourself the right way, then you'll be fine. Um, what the fact that like I just knew once I got out that I didn't want to go back there. So whatever, it wasn't like an incident or something happened, or something happened to me or somebody, or something I saw or anything. Like it was just being around a bunch of men for a long period of time. You don't want to go there no more. You don't want to do that no more. So, and then shifting aside, like I always had a heart, so I always knew that I wanted to do something with my life. I didn't want to just be a fuck up, just be a dude who sold drugs and went to jail and pissed away his life. So I always knew that jail ain't no place that I want to be. So a pivotal thing, no, but just the whole scenario of being locked up, being separated away from your family, being told what to do, like that experience alone was enough to be like, there's got to be some better stuff out here. And that's
And how old were you when you went to jail?
19,
For how long?
8 months that time.
Okay. So just backpedaling a little bit. So you got kicked out of ninth grade. You went to 10th grade for like 2 weeks. So I'm thinking that's like 15 years old, 15, 16, and then you went to jail at 19. So between those years, what did you do? You just were
Got worse.
and but what did you do? Like you were just hustling.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So you was just in the streets. Okay.
Just in the street.
And then ended up
just
going to
mainly
jail.
hustling, just mainly selling drugs from 15 to 19. There was the rougher stuff hadn't come yet, so just selling crack, nickel bags. That's it.
Okay.
Oh shit.
Okay.
Yeah, that's it.
Okay. No, I just wanted to I was just forming a timeline in my head. So you said just that experience let you know that that was not something that you wanted to do again. You wanted to make sure that you were in jail and you knew you did not want to go back.
No, at all. Like coming out of jail, I ain't have nothing. So yeah, that I did know then that I do not want to go. I don't want to sell drugs no more. That's something I'm not going to do. So that I made a promise to. I ended up doing some other shit, but that I made a promise to myself that I'm not going to do that no more.
Okay. So I know this is your show,
You
but
don't have to keep prefacing that.
because you say I like to be in control and all that, but I don't want to. I just want your permission to ask some questions. So I'm going to go back again because you talked about your childhood and your education period. But what was your childhood like? Like, who are you? I'm asking you the same question. Who are you? What was your family life like?
Like I said, we grew up on 26 in York to Dolphin, 25th to 27th. Family life was like, my mom was a single mom. She used to mess with, lots of guys. She was promiscuous in her way. She was young. So home life wasn't stable, if you mean like a family life, like mom and dad there every day. No, my parents were young and still doing whatever the fuck they wanted to do. Still getting high, still running the street. But they had 5 kids. So yeah, we lived in 4-bedroom house on the corner, 26th Street, and it was me, my 3 brothers, and my little sister. So that's what my home life was like.
So you are the second oldest.
Mm-hmm.
Me being the oldest child, did you feel like you had a lot of responsibility as an older sibling, or because I know that you have an older brother than your sister and you have 2 younger brothers, but I know that the things that you were doing in your life was completely different than the things they were doing in their life. Did you feel like there was a lot of responsibility on you?
In the beginning, no, because they were super young. So in the beginning, I didn't think like that. Like when I was outside doing bad shit, they wasn't out there yet. So no, in the beginning. But as they got a little older and was able to be outside, then yeah, obviously I didn't want them seeing me do certain things, serve customers or smoke weed. Yeah. So yeah, that when they got older, I felt a sense of responsibility. It's weird because they were boys and they were like going out into the street, and I felt a sense of responsibility for what they saw. I don't think I necessarily felt that sense of responsibility for my sister, because she wasn't a brother and wasn't going out in the street. So it's like I just didn't want them to see this. Like my sister wasn't in the street, or like she didn't have friends in that neighborhood where she would be out on corners and shit like that and seeing me do stuff. My brothers did. So yeah, I had a sense of responsibility for them once they was out and old enough to see what I was doing.
So not necessarily responsibility to take care of them directly, but to indirectly take care of them by shielding them from the things that you were doing.
No way that I ever feel like a financial responsibility that I had to take. I'm a kid myself. Like, I didn't have 5 kids. My mom had 5 kids. So, no, in no way, shape, or form did I ever feel financially responsible for them. But, like, I knew how we grew up. Like, I knew our dad's situation, in and out, out and in. Like, I knew how that was. So, you know, I wasn't hands-on with them. I would never claim that, like, you know, I was in their shit every day. But again, I wouldn't let them see me smoke weed, serve customers, dumb shit like that. Now, them little dudes went behind my back and saw shit and, you know, stuff that I had in the house and did stuff like that. But I didn't want them to see that.
Being an older sibling is hard. I remember, like you saying that, I remember, you know, me being put out, but when I would see my sisters, I would make sure that, you know, they didn't see me in a certain way. Like, when I seen them, like, I didn't want to be high, I didn't want to, definitely not drunk. Like, I just wanted them to see me and not have their memories distorted, or, you know, so it was I was more responsible for their caretaking and their well-being physically when I was in the house growing up as a teenager. But then when I left, it was like you said, it was more so indirect, what I didn't want them to see more so than what I showed them.
And your situation is a little different because you got kicked out. Like, I left my mom's house on purpose. Probably, when did you get kicked out? At 17?
No, I was 18.
So
I remember the exact date, June 26, 1999.
Yeah, probably was around the same time for me that I did not want to stay there no more. So, you know, I purposely left there. So yeah, them seeing me in the street, just, I didn't want them to, you know, see certain shit. Because they was boys. Like, it was 10 times out of 10 they would have ended up just like me if I didn't give a shit about that.
Right.
So, in our neighborhood, like, it just sucks you right in. It's not like it's a, because I always felt like this, and this is just my experience from growing up in that neighborhood. Like, that box, that 25th to 27th, that York to Dolphin box, like, was just that. Like, nobody saw anything outside that box. Nobody knew anything outside that box. Like, we weren't known outside that box. Like, that's why it was so insulated, because that's all we knew. And them going into that, yeah, they would have definitely been who I was or worse.
And it's a shame because culturally, I feel like there are some benefits to having that neighborhood environment, that neighborhood blanket, that sense of community, but when it's a nourishing community. Like, you know, nowadays, unfortunately, children don't grow up with that neighborhood mentality because, you know, parents move from house to house, or you just have to be more vigilant about who your children communicate with or who they hang out with. So the people next door, you might not let your kids hang out with them. And unfortunately,
plus it's the phones.
Yeah, phones, so kids don't want to go outside. And the streets are crazy in Philly, so a lot of kids aren't being outside anyway. So it's a different sense of community. But hearing you say that, like, that box, again, if it's a nurturing environment, then it could be a good thing. You still want people to break outside the box and experience life and, you know people from other neighborhoods, because there are definitely things that you can learn from it. So it's a shame that in our situation, that box wasn't as nurturing as it could be. One of the things that I always remember, though, that I liked about our neighborhood, which is such a thing of the past, we grew up in a neighborhood with so many Black-owned businesses.
Yep.
That people don't like. That's just a thing of the past. We had a Black-owned cleaners. I mean, I'm sure there's
Corner
probably
store.
some somewhere, but that's something that mostly is like Korean owned. A black owned laundromat, which is definitely mostly Korean owned.
Barbershop.
Barbershop, a couple of them. Corner stores, which now we know it's all the bodegas and poppy stores. We had the trash rubbish removal company that my grandparents owned. We had the black owned flower shop, Miss Heyman's. Like there were just so
Black
many,
owned bars.
yeah, bars. Yeah, there
Yeah.
were so many establishments. I'm thinking, was there a locksmith or something like that? The car wash that was Mr. Myers. Like there was just so many black-owned
Mechanics.
establishments in that community that children could have grew up and learned from, but instead it went the other direction. The black-owned laundromat. I remember my mom used to send me there. Stuff used to be like $2. And we would sometimes take 10 things there. They might be there for the season, but then eventually you remember and go pick it up. And then people started robbing them, So it's like things like that happens. But it's a shame that that sense of community, which it can have a very positive effect if it's nourishing, but it can be detrimental if it's a community that's like a vacuum that just sucks you in, but it doesn't produce. Now, I do want to say, I have a group of friends, we call ourselves the Gordon Street Girls from that community who we grew up there and branched out, live in other places. Some have college degrees, families, great jobs, and we pride ourselves on where we come from, but also pride ourselves that we allowed that to shape us into who we are. But then we moved on, to some people would be ashamed of where they come from, and I never, ever would feel like that. When you asked about high school, I remember going to high school and Girls High being people from all over the city. Ninth grade, meeting a couple white girls, and you introduce yourself. Hey, where are you from North Philly. And one of the girls was like, oh my goodness, you're from North Philly, have you ever seen anybody get killed? No. Like no.
That's weird.
But that was their impression of North Philly. That they probably were from the Northeast, or I don't know. I don't know where they were from, but that was their impression of North Philly. That was the first thing they asked, and I'm thinking, hell no, did you ever see somebody get killed?
I've always said that and told you this, but like I am somewhat ashamed of where I came from, just because you wasn't in it like I was in it, and you wasn't in the thick of it. And like, yeah, my neighborhood, I took stuff from my neighborhood, street smarts and things like that, but I don't have those friendships from anybody that I grew up with from around there. But it was a vacuum. It all it did was decrease, not increase. It didn't produce anybody great from there. Like, again, we wasn't known outside of that box. None of us were. So we all thought we were somebody, but we wasn't. Like, and when I got older and went in other neighborhoods and talked to other dudes, nobody knew who we were.
But do you feel like it was the same in their neighborhoods as well? Unless you were like some big time drug dealer or big time known gangster. So everybody had their own little block.
Yeah, everybody had their own little blocks, but you could go in other neighborhoods and know who people are. Like people went out, people had other friends, people did other things. Not in that box. In that box, people only hung with the same people. They only fucked the same girls. They didn't go nowhere. They just hung in that box. And anybody that came into that box, they didn't like. Like, you couldn't bring other people from other neighborhoods into the box. You couldn't bring other girls around, because the girls in the box would beat them up or make them feel like they shouldn't be there. So the box was bad. It was a vacuum. And I always felt like, I'm halfway ashamed of being from there.
Wow. So are you ashamed of being from there, or just of some of the things that you did there? Because it shaped you. Even the bad parts of our life shape us into who we are.
Obviously, everything was a lesson. But
right. So are you just some of the ashamed of some of the things that you did because of being from that environment?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. There's a lot of things that I did that I shouldn't have done. There's a lot of people I've trusted that I shouldn't have trusted. Um, but yeah, more or less individually, there's a lot of things that I'm not proud of in my life that I've done that I know had I not been from there, I wouldn't have done them.
Well, I'm proud of you despite all the things, that you may
And
have done.
I've gotten a lot from 26th Street as far as street smarts and know-how, and it shaped me into who I am today. I'm not acknowledging that, but I do have to acknowledge the other side.
And that's fair. You know what? It's weird because in growing up, you think about, and we've talked about this, about being from the hood and being poor and that sort of thing. And it's really relative. And we talk about, all right, we might not have been fortunate, but we ain't missed no. No, let me not say that. We may not have been as fortunate financially as others, but we ain't missed no meals. Like,
No.
we ain't never had to go without water. It wasn't like, okay, y'all can't brush y'all teeth because don't nobody got you know what I mean. So it's weird because I know that my mom worked every day, but I know that she struggled, and looking back on it, be like, damn, how did she do that? And I think about what things that we had, and I think about things that we didn't have. But then when you see other people and you hear other stories, you be like, nah, I can't complain because that wasn't my plight. Like, we ate meals every day. We ain't never, if we ate oodles and noodles, it was because of choice. I never had a sugar sandwich. I never had a syrup sandwich. I never had a mayonnaise sandwich. Like, I never had to.
Hungry.
Yeah, I never had to make those meal option or make any of those
you
options
never had to
of
wear
choice.
Your sister's clothes. Things like that.
Right. Like, if I may not have had the latest names and brands, but we were clean. We had to wash. That was never an option. Our lights were never off. Cable might have been off, on and off. Yeah,
I could say the same thing. Like, I never missed a meal, and we always had a soft landing spot, which was my grandmother. So if shit got tight in our household, we always could take a ride to Nana house and get food. But we never missed a meal. Always had a blanket to cover up with. Like, never was heatless in the winter. Always had fans in the summer. Like, so yeah.
I was about to say, we ain't always have air, but we had fans.
Yeah,
we made
like,
it work.
we didn't grow up with air conditioning, but my mom always would go get a couple of box fans if it was 100 degrees outside. Like, every family didn't do that or have that. So yeah, we had some luxuries. But again, it's the 90s. Like, my parents was young. They fucked up. Everybody fucked up.
But it's just, everything in life is relative because you have somebody who can. This is another memory that just triggered in my head. I remember in 7th grade, and I'm not gonna say his name, but this guy, we're friends on Facebook, and he was from Mount Airy, and I remember, I think it was just like a general conversation about neighborhoods or whatever, and I said something about, we don't have no grass or what, because we didn't have any trees on my street. I think y'all had a corner tree, but we didn't even have any trees. We damn sure ain't had no grass. And he comment like, what you mean you don't have no grass in your neighborhood? Where you live? And that made me think and that's probably one of those things in my mind, how I always wanted a lawn in the backyard because it was, I think that was one of those little triggers that stuck with you.
Who the fuck you friends with Facebook on?
Somebody from 7th grade.
Oh.
But it was him saying that, and again, he was from Philly, he was from Mount Airy. I don't know if I had ever been to Mount Airy at that age. Now in hindsight, it's you was from Mount Airy. It wasn't like you were from some financially wealthy family, but it was just one of those little things that you grow up without realizing that it's damn, we didn't grow up with grass. Just things that people take for granted. People out there mowing the lawns, and we have a beautiful yard and all that.
We had a tree in front of our door. I used to climb it all the time.
Yeah.
So we had a big ass tree in front of our house.
But not having some of those things makes you appreciate so much more the life that you're able to build today. We can have a tree. I love my garden. Just those things that we didn't have growing up because of not choices that we made, but just the circumstances that we were born into.
Right.
And maybe not even choices that our parents made. It may have been a result of circumstances they were born into. That's neither here nor there, but some
That's
of those things,
story.
some of those things just stick with you, and it makes you appreciate everything from childhood, whether it's being in the LD class or
Learning disability.
yes, or you being, put handcuffs on in front of the auditorium full of students. Just those little moments in life that you think they all have shaped us into who we are. Some of those moments are bigger pieces of the puzzle than others, but every puzzle needs the little corner piece that may seem irrelevant, but it's
makes
important.
The
Yeah, that was a great metaphor I just used. Two up top.
This was good. This was good conversation. I'm sure these topics can lead into a part 2. So this was part 1 of who we are. We still got more to come, more to say. And also I want to say thank you to all the people out there who subscribe, all the people out there who support us, who watch us. We really appreciate that. Don't want the show to end without that going unsaid. But look for this episode and part 2 probably the following week. Pick up our conversation right where we left off, getting everybody known with us, acclimated with us, who we are, where we come from, why we want to do this, why we want to give our story to the people and talk honest conversation. So stay tuned for that. Again, thank you. Thank you to my guests, my wife, Natasha.
Am I always going to be your favorite guest?
No, you're not always going to be a guest, but...
No, I'm not always going to be your favorite guest.
Of course, you're my wife. I love you.
Okay.
You're always going to be my favorite girl.
I'm your favorite everything?
Yes.
Okay.
But, so, more episodes coming. Thank you again for support, share, subscribe, tell your friends. Word of mouth is the best marketing. Appreciate y'all. If you fuck with us, fuck with us. If you don't, you should. Peace.